Hi, this is Marilyn Ghigliotti from Clerks 1 and 3, and you're listening to Fascination Street podcast.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with Marilyn Ghigliotti. Marilyn is an actress, a producer, and a director. Most notably, you will all remember her as Veronica from Clerks and Clerks 3. In this episode, we talk about where she grew up, what got her into acting, how she came to be a part of the Clerks cast, and some of the things that have happened as a result of being a part of that phenom that was Clerks. We talk about her involvement in a biopic-style movie called Shooting Clerks, which is sort of a behind-the-scenes scripted movie about the making of Clerks. That's a mouthful. So she was in a movie about a movie that she was in. That's the weirdest sentence. We also talk about her newest short film that she directed called A Mother's Love. It was a lot of fun talking to Marilyn. She is super, super sweet. She's very open. It didn't seem like there was any subject she wouldn't talk about. I thank you so much, Marilyn, for your time. You are an angel. And this is my conversation with that Clerks girl, Marilyn Ghigliotti. Yeah, talk to me, yeah. Welcome to Fascination Street podcast, Marilyn Ghigliotti. How you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
You are so welcome. I'm going to ask this because I hear everybody ask this all the time. Did I say your last name correctly?
Say it again.
Ghigliotti.
Yeah, it sounds fine.
No, sure, close enough.
When you first said it, it didn't sound odd in any way, so.
Well, good. It didn't stand out as incorrect.
No.
I like to start with where people were born and raised and how they grew up, and it kind of helps us understand how they got to where they are. So if you don't mind, where were you born and raised? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in New York City, I believe, actually. That's what my birth certificate says anyway. But my earliest childhood memory is Camber Heights, Queens, actually. I attended PS 147. It's funny that I can remember that because there's so many things I can't remember. And the fact that I remember that. But from Queens, I remember then living in Long Island from fourth grade, I think, till about sixth grade. And then my parents both being from Puerto Rico, at a certain point, we moved to New Jersey for an interim of a couple of months and then moved out to Puerto Rico. I was in seventh and eighth grade out there.
Really?
Yeah, beautiful country to visit. You know, when you're born and bred in the States, it's a hard transition to kind of go out there. I understood Spanish. I think I could speak it at some point, but I didn't know how to read or write it. So basically, my mom got this thick dictionary that was also, I think it was all in Spanish. I can't even remember, but I just remember it being like uber thick. And she would just point to words and we'd have to phonetically kind of pronounce them and things like that. And so even going into seventh grade, it was like a whole phonetic kind of a learning experience, and going home and my mother asking if we had homework, but she said homework in English, not in Spanish. And I'm like, oh, no, but we have this thing. And homework in Spanish is asignación. And she's like, no, but we have this. It's like, oh, that's homework. It's like, oh, well, how am I supposed to know that?
So I find it interesting that both of your parents were Puerto Rican, and you didn't, I guess you guys didn't speak Spanish in the house when you were growing up before that?
My mom spoke Spanish in the house. Her English was always broken. My dad, though, was English and Spanish, I believe. But, you know, like I said, I understood it, and
Sure.
I probably spoke it as well. But mostly we talked to my parents in English.
Plus, I guess you don't do a whole lot of reading and writing in your house between your between your parents. So it would make sense that you would understand it more and speak it more than you could maybe read or write it.
Yeah, well, because, we were going to school and everything was English, so there was no need for us to be reading and writing in Spanish.
Right.
because usually those kind of lessons don't come until high school. It's more high school stuff that you start to take languages.
Right. One of the things that I find interesting about the East Coast is, you said it earlier, you went to PS 147. I've only ever really lived in San Antonio, Texas, and all of our schools are named after people.
Uh-huh.
A bunch of the high schools are named after chief justices of the Supreme Court or whatever, or an elementary school named after that teacher who died in the space shuttle explosion. You know, like they all have names. And so the first time I ever even heard of a PS any number, of course, it was on like Law and Order or whatever. And they're like, oh, there's an issue at PS 140. I was like, what the hell does that even mean? I think that's so weird. I don't know why they do that. Why do they do that? I'm going to ask you, since you invented all of the East Coast.
I wouldn't know exactly, but I can only imagine it's because there are so many schools in the New York system, you know, and so many counties and boroughs and things like that. So it differentiates the public school system between districts. That's a total guess.
Also, there's probably a lot more like private schools in that area than there is down here. So maybe that's part of it.
I don't know, because PS stands for public school.
Right.
Because, yeah, when I went to school in Long Island, I remember it having a name, Unity Drive School, something like that.
Interesting. So what precipitated the temporary move to Puerto Rico? Was it for a job for your parents?
Business opportunity for my dad. My mom, she worked in the house. Dad was a mechanic by trade of many different areas. It was nice to have a dad who worked on your car. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, no, he had the opportunity to kind of work for himself in Puerto Rico because my dad was running a gas station that was owned by an uncle. And so, you know, he worked on the cars there, ran the gas station and all that kind of stuff. Like before that, he worked for different businesses that needed a mechanic to fix their machines in whatever capacity. Like when we moved back, he worked for Sunshine Biscuits. Remember that?
Wow, fixing their biscuit machines.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's like, you don't hear about Sunshine Biscuits anymore. They went out of business a long time ago, but it was nice getting some, you know, cookies that he was able to buy and bring home.
Oh my gosh, you just lived the most amazing life. You got to tour the world. You got to live in different countries. Your dad fixed your car all the time and brought you home cookies. This sounds amazing.
Hey, you know, it's not bad. It's like at a certain point, my ex-husband took over fixing my cars, you know, but it's always nice to have that male who can actually work on cars. Although they make cars nowadays, so you can't fix them at home.
Yeah, but they also make them nowadays that they don't break down as much. Like I remember growing up, like our car was so shitty, and I don't even just mean like my parents' car. I mean like every car I saw was so shitty. Like if there was a crazy rainstorm, you'd have to pull over because you just couldn't see. Like the windshield wipers would not work that fast, and I mean there was just all this sounds, and every time it was cold, it didn't matter what you did, you're freezing your ass off inside the car. So I think cars have come a long way as far as being safer and better and more workable, or yes, more worky. But also, yeah, to your point, I mean, unless you have a degree in coding and computers, you can't do shit on the car nowadays. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things you're able to do on your own, but yeah, for the most part, it's like you almost need to have a digital thing that attaches to the car to tell you what's wrong with it, and so then you just kind of fix it.
It's pretty crazy. So, what did your parents want you to be? Like, what was their dream for their baby?
You know, it wasn't so much of a dream as it was to be able to survive. And it was more my mom, I'd have to say. You know, it was always about being able to get a job that's safe, that I don't have to worry about in the future and things like that. And as we found out, it really doesn't matter what kind of job you have, that they're not safe in any way completely from being terminated or being done away with. And things like that, especially in this day and age, you know, with technology the way that it is. I mean, because at a certain point, I started working out in an office, and all the knowledge that I have as far as working in an office is obsolete at this point.
Yeah, offices have surely changed a lot in the last few years. I asked what was their expectation of the future. What was yours? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Honestly, I didn't know. My high school, offered some vocational teachings. There was also a different school in the area that was a vocational school completely. And at a certain point, I did think about becoming hair and makeup artist because they actually had that vocation in the school. But I didn't do it in school because there were certain requirements, and biology was a requirement. And I honestly did not feel like actually dissecting a frog just to become a hair.
Don't you think that's weird?
Yeah.
That's a weird prerequisite.
Well, I see why biology is a prerequisite, because we do have to learn certain bone structures and muscles of the anatomy because of what we do. Yes, I finally did go to cosmetology school, but learning the parts of the head and things like that. So I see why. And unfortunately, though, in school, learning biology also meant dissecting frogs and other anatomies, not just people.
Yes, frogs and little pig fetuses are all kinds of weird stuff. I still think it's weird that to be able to do hair and makeup on a human, you have to cut a frog in half. That's so weird.
Well, that's only because it was a requirement in the high school.
Yeah, it was a basic. I get it.
Yeah, because once I actually did go to cosmetology school, we were learning the anatomy and the bone structures and things like that. And of course, we didn't have to do biology. It's like it was just in the book that we had to learn.
Right. Nice. So at what point did acting even come across your radar? I know you did some community theater stuff, and maybe you had taken some acting classes. I'm not really sure. But at what point did you decide, hey, you know what? I could try that. That looks fun.
The funny part about that is it's like when I was younger, I wanted to take dance lessons. That was always something that interested me, but it's not something that I looked at as a career. Even though I was watching this on TV, mind you, it's not something that I thought was attainable or even a thought. You know, it's like when you see other people actually making a career out of something, when you're that young, I don't think it crosses your mind as like, oh, I can make a career out of this too. So I would kind of emulate moves from dancers that I would see and things like that. And I loved watching the Summer Olympics more than the Winter Olympics and things like that. But I watched the Winter Olympics as well. So you're seeing these acrobatics, which is part of dancing, I would say.
Yeah, gymnastic and dance and the flow routines and all that stuff. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So at a certain point, it's like after going to cosmetology school, I got married, had my child, and then got divorced and kind of started to explore what was available to me and things that I had always looked at doing. Dance was one of them. So I took like my first jazz class because one of the girls that I worked with also did jazz classes. And so I attended one of her jazz classes. And what stood out for me was that at the end of the night, when the instructor says to me, oh, you've danced before, right? It's like, you did pretty good. And I'm like, no, I haven't. This was my first time. So, you know, it kind of gets in your brain a little bit, you know, that little voice. It's like, if only you had been doing this, you know, when you wanted to, when you were younger, and what you could possibly be doing right now had you started when you were younger. But you kind of go with what life throws at you at the time. And I enjoyed those dance classes that I was taking. And then at a certain point, I was looking at other things. Petite modeling at that time was kind of becoming a thing. So I was like, let me look into that. There was shoe modeling because I had the perfect shoe size for that.
What is the perfect shoe size for foot model?
Well, at that time, it was a size 6. But none of it was really kind of sticking or anything like that. And then I found some acting classes that were being taught in New Jersey by someone who came from the actor's studio.
Oh.
And so I kind of took those classes for a couple of years until I felt comfortable enough with what I had learned to then take it out to the community theater and start to get myself seen, known, you know, because they have to kind of get to know you. Because to some degree, community theater is a little bit of a clique, just as acting is a little bit of a clique.
Just as kind of, I think anything is, you know, like I used to work in the banking industry, and every time I worked at a new bank, it was real cliquey. I mean, yeah. I feel like really everything is cliquey. It's just there's the people who've been here and the people who know each other, and then there's the new person.
Exactly. our local paper out there would list all the auditions that were happening in the community theater circuit. And so I would start going. And the first one that I landed, it was doing vignettes of Chekhov.
You were that girl, the girl,
That
girl,
girl.
that girl.
That's what the character name was for anybody out there like wondering. It's like, well, that girl who? It's like that girl, just like who's on first and what's on second. But it was a scene. It was a series of vignettes, and I forget how many vignettes there were, but my scene just happened to be where dad takes his son who's coming of age
to become a man.
To become a man. Exactly. The funny thing is that this series of vignettes were being done at the basement of a church that had a theater underneath it.
How'd they like that?
Not very much.
I think it's funny that, like when I was growing up, you would hear, I mean, I'm sure it was all bullshit, but you would always hear, sort of the guy taking his kid to become a man or whatever. And it was just sort of commonplace, whether it happened in real life or not. I have no idea, nor do I care. But I feel like if that was even a rumor about anybody nowadays, people would be in jail. People would lose their children. Like, it seems like a crazy different time. Because, I can't imagine that even my kids who are 30, I can't imagine they've ever even heard anybody say anything close to that.
Yeah. I mean, and the funny thing about it is, it's like, because it's not like they had seen it. All they knew was the situation of what that scene was. And it's not like there was any nudity to it or anything explicit. And
it's a community theater. I mean, come on.
There was no taking clothes off of any kind. It was just a conversation back and forth between the three people. I don't even remember the dialogue as to how, in depth it was as far as talk. It's like, I really don't think it was that.
I can't imagine that it was. No way.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it's like the people who were running the show, it's like they were like, absolutely not. We're keeping it in. So, but when I was up there, though, the one thing that really struck a chord for me is that being a middle child, coming from a family that you never felt heard, and you're standing up there and people are actually listening to you, kind of felt good.
In that way that, oh, look, I do have worth. I do have value. Plus, you had recently come out of a divorce. And so there was that probably aspect of I wasn't heard there. I didn't feel like I had value in that relationship. Maybe I'm projecting.
Mostly it was, growing up in the family as a middle child. Not that it was a bad upbringing by any means, but everybody has their thing in their family, and mine, one of them was just not really being heard, family dynamics. So the fact that my words had value on that stage and people were paying attention to my performance, or even me for that matter, it kind of hit a chord and hit a passion in me to be able to bring some joy to people, bring awareness in whatever way that I can, in whatever it is that I'm portraying.
So during your stint doing community theater, which lasted a bit of time, that's where you first met and began working with Brian O'Halloran, who plays Dante in Clerks. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, let me go back a little bit, because I had become aware of Brian at one of the community theaters that I had gone to kind of get to know, and then also went to a performance that they were having of Dracula, and he was playing Renfield.
Oh.
He totally blew me away. And so then I auditioned for a role back at that community theater that didn't want to see me as that girl. We did Wait Until Dark. And I think that was the first time that we had actually worked together. For anybody who's familiar with Wait Until Dark, it's a blind woman who inadvertently becomes the mark of some bad guys because of something she's not even aware of that is hidden in a doll that was brought in by one of her next door neighbors. This role was also played by Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, that's a name.
That is a name. Yes. Brian played the bad guy who was trying to get in my good graces and then is trying to kill me. That was a really challenging and fun role to play. And because she was blind, I figured it's like, oh, let me get a hold of see if there's a blind school or somewhere around, and see if I can't maybe have them kind of coach me on some of the things.
You were doing this for a community theater role?
Sure.
Whoa.
I was looking to do it for a community theater role, but when I actually approached that school via phone call, they were of no help. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, nice.
I don't even remember the name of the school. Been too long, but I felt like they thought I was crazy or something. So I just took it upon myself. All right, how can I make this work for me? Let's figure out how we can do this. And so I would just kind of put a bandana on or something like that and just kind of walk around the house and see what it was like to be blind. But, it's not like I can do that on the stage, just putting a bandana on. So, you know how sometimes when you kind of daydream and your eyes just kind of go out of focus. So that's what I would kind of do. Just kind of like not really focus in on anything so that eventually it's like, okay, this is how I need to do that. And what I found also was that you kind of have to see with your ears. You have to kind of
develop your other senses.
Yeah. And it's not like I don't believe that mine developed in the same way as someone who was truly blind.
Sure.
But that's definitely something that you kind of had to take into account. And there were quite a few stunt items that I needed to kind of do on the stage as well, because I have to trip over a couch. And eventually it's like that was kind of taking its toll on me. But yeah, no, it was a fun role to play.
Nice.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
A battle for humanity's future is being waged on American soil right now. The cannabis plant has been used by humans for thousands of years, and yet it is still severely criminalized in much of the world. But the world is changing. Yay! In the U.S., 37 states have legalized cannabis for medical purposes, and 18 have done so for recreational use by adults. In Illinois, legalized cannabis has spurred an explosion of new businesses and products, all bringing in a massive stream of newly created revenue that other states are eager to match. Yet federally, cannabis faces much of the same resistance of the 1900s. How did marijuana get such a bad reputation? Why is it still so federally restricted? How are smoking and vaping different? How many edibles are too many? Which companies are coming out with the best new products? And who benefits from keeping Mary Jane in the dark? These are the types of questions we'll attempt to answer on the Cannabis Man podcast. A thorough look at all things cannabis, from its history to its explosion in states that have legalized it. So look out for the Cannabis Man podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's get back into it.
So at some point you became aware of, I guess, a casting call or auditions. Some no-name nobody out of Nowheresville, New Jersey was going to make a movie with an illustrious budget of however much he could sell his comic books for.
Yeah.
So first, how did you find out about this audition?
I was doing another play in Red Bank. I don't believe this theater is even around anymore. But at that time, I was doing Same Time Next Year, another classic film. And the talk was going around that, oh, this kid is coming and he's going to be holding auditions for a film that he's doing for school over at the First Avenue Playhouse. And so I went over there to audition. They wanted us to do a monologue. Everybody always has something to say about me saying this, but it's like, for me, I don't feel like I did my best with that audition. Everybody can see it on the 10th anniversary DVD. I mean, yes, it was good. And it got me the role for Veronica on Clerks. And it kind of really blew away everybody that was there, especially Kevin, Mike, and Zapsik and all that kind of stuff. But
Zapsik was there?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Wow.
Not Mike Zapsik. I'm sorry. Walter Flanagan. Sorry.
Oh,
Walter.
okay, cool. Previous guest of the show, Walt Flanagan. All right. I was confused there.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's there were a few others that were there as well, but it kind of freaked them out not blew them away, but it freaked them out that I was able to get upset. But Kevin called me. I don't even know what the time frame was as far as audition to phone call. But if I would go down to the convenience store where he was working, talk to him and pick up the script, take it for a read, see if I was comfortable.
That's one of the ways you could probably tell, if you didn't already know, that he was not in the film business. Nobody hands a script to anybody now.
True. Well, not completely true, actually. People do. It just depends on what point of filmmaking that you're at. Because at a certain point, you are told it's like, you really shouldn't give your script away, especially to the big producing places, because you'll never see a dime and they may take your story.
Oh, how sweet.
But yeah, no, at this point, it's like, we were all green. And for him, it's like he just wanted to make sure that I didn't have any issues with the whole 37 and things like that.
Just for you, whenever you tell your story again, you should say you went to PS 37.
It was. I got it. Took me a second there for.
So how were you with all of that? Because, I mean, I've seen the film and I mean, it's been a while, but there's some pretty graphic words. I mean, there's nothing really graphic on the screen, but it's a pretty vulgar script. And so how were you? Were you obviously you're okay with that?
Totally okay. I took it to work. I was in the salon. I was not busy that day because I pretty much read the whole script in one sitting and I was laughing. So yeah, I was totally up for doing this. And I felt like this was going to be something that I could sink my teeth into as far as it being like my first role for film.
Now, I know that you thought the script was good, right? Obviously, or you wouldn't have done it. But in your wildest dreams, could you have possibly imagined the phenomenon that Clerks became?
No, I think it's hard to imagine for anything. I'm realistic. Having been in this business as long as I've been already and running into people who have their own projects and list for casting and all this kind of stuff, and even getting sent links to short films or whatnot. It's like, oh, take a look at this. I really love it. It's like, it's a great project. And this, like on all those levels. And, it's great for them. It's great to them. But it didn't hit the mark for me.
I feel like sometimes scripts are like when a 2-year-old draws you in class and it's like, look what I did. Look, it looks just like, you're like, oh, that you really think that's cool. But,
I mean, to some degree, yeah, absolutely. For little kids, something like that, it's like, obviously, you play it up. And sometimes it actually is like, it's not playing it up. It's actually, wow, this is really great for, whatever age that they are. When someone is doing their own project, it's hard to be subjective sometimes. And I feel for myself, maybe I'm a little too hard. If anything, I'm subjective in the opposite direction that most other people are. But it's difficult. It's difficult when they're asking for your critique and your honest critique. And I'm like, look, I will be honest. That doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong, but this is my take. And I would give them my honest feedback.
I know that you guys filmed in the convenience store, like after they closed, like all night long and into the morning or whatever, until, basically from close to open is when you guys shot. And then were you still going to work every day after that at your regular job?
Yeah, it wasn't so bad for me though, as it was for everybody, like all the other guys, like Brian, Jeff, Kevin, and the other guys that were there, Scott, Mosier, and Dave Klein. I had 4 shooting days, 3 of them nights, 1 of them day. And they weren't consecutive that I could remember. So it wasn't so bad.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You weren't in Clerks 2, right?
I was not.
But you were in Clerks 3. You are in Clerks 3, which recently came out. And I guess he's still touring it. He's 4-walling it all over the place right now. Yeah. And if it's somewhere near you, like within striking distance, you try to go to those events, right?
I did, yeah. Well, when it started, it wasn't on the East Coast. And so obviously that's not nearby for me.
Sure.
So I did have to kind of fly myself out there, but I certainly didn't want to miss it.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, I mean, because it's not like that was part of the production cost. I mean, if you flew anywhere to be part of that, that was out of your pocket, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that.
I've seen on social media where people seem to have a hard time understanding that and maybe are a little bit mad at you for not showing up at some of these events. And I'm just like, guys, take it easy, man. This lady's having to pay for this herself.
Yeah. And, certainly life has not been easy. It's like we got through a pandemic. I'm not really working. And so there's not much in my piggy bank. But I took this upon myself to go out there because I certainly couldn't miss the opening of the film. And I had seen it with people already when we had our premiere out here in LA. And it was pretty good for premieres because there were quite a few fans that were in the audience as well that got to go to the premiere. So that was pretty cool. I hear, I don't know this for a fact, but I've heard Kevin being one of them saying how premieres are really bad as far as gauging how well a film is going to do because there are people in the industry and they're not as invested maybe in the film as maybe a fan is. I thought our premiere went pretty well, but in comparison to the first screening at the Red Bank Theater, yeah, it's kind of a couple bars ahead. It was pretty intense energy wise. And then just kind of going up on that stage afterwards, it was overwhelming.
Yeah, I would imagine. I can't even imagine. Moving on a little bit, you were also in, it was sort of a biopic style called Shooting Clerks. I believe it was directed by Chris Downey,
yes.
Previous guest of my show as well.
Oh, okay.
What was that like? You're in a movie about a movie that you were in.
Yeah, and I'm still alive.
It seems like it was wildly crazy. It wasn't even made on the continent where you live.
Yeah, I can't even remember because this was many years ago already that Christopher contacted me via email or probably social media, actually.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Wanting to get my take and interview me because he was going to be doing this movie and just gaining every aspect and thoughts of, what we went through to audition and make the movie. So it's been a long time in the making. And a lot of people are a little bit frustrated that it hasn't come out yet, but it takes a lot, not just money, but a lot of other things to be able to get something like this made, especially because you are talking about people who are still living, getting rights to all that, getting rights to music that has been used in a film that was made, and you're making this film about that, where it's like, it may not have cost anything before, almost 30 years ago, but actually costs something now. There's just so many legalities that they could not have even imagined about to be able to get this all done. And because of as much help that I could be behind the scenes as well, not just in the acting part of it, I have been given a producer credit on that.
On Shooting Clerks?
Yeah, there was any way that I could help. If it was within my ability, I took it upon myself to do. There were some things that happened in there. I'm like, because I didn't get to see the film when everybody else had already gotten to see the film. I didn't get to see it until I think it was 2017 at San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think it was 2017 or 2018. And the guys were really anxious in a good and bad way for me to see it, because there are things in there that take place that were mentioned in the 10th anniversary DVD that when I was interviewed for that 10th anniversary DVD, I didn't even know about until I was questioned about it. I'm like, what? A little situation between Jeff and I, which I didn't even know about until, like I said, the 10th anniversary DVD, which I was confused and shocked about, and still confused and shocked about it, and still can't remember it. But Jeff and I we kissed and made up. So we're all good on that. But that whole situation, I was just like not really looking forward to it being on that screen. And then there were other things. There were some liberties taken, but for the most part, it follows the story. But there were still some liberties taken. And then the one thing that I tell the guys as well is like, so yeah, well, we all shared that condo. We weren't in a different room where Kevin was only in the one condo. And you're showing me with a wine glass. I'm like, I don't drink. So
That's funny.
But they have a really nice project that they put together, a nice film that they put together. So hopefully pretty soon they'll be able to finally get that out to the masses.
Is it a distribution problem, or is it like you were saying with all the rights and all that other stuff?
I don't know if it still is, but at a certain point there was distribution problem. There was also legality issues as well
Sure.
that needed to get crossed and dotted. I don't know if they all got taken care of yet, and finding attorneys, that will kind of
Sure.
work with their budget. There's music rights as well that they've been trying to get, as well as being able to pay for those music rights.
Right. Well, moving on a little bit, I know that you had directed, I think maybe a short film a few years ago, but you recently, and I mean recently, came out with your full feature directorial debut. It's called A Mother's Love. Am I correct about all of the things I said so far?
It's not a full feature. It is a short film.
Oh, it is a short. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little over 12 minutes long.
Okay. What's it about?
So it is about a mother who struggles with raising her newborn baby. She herself lost her mother at a young age. So she has these letters that she goes back to when she needs to visit with her mom.
Oh.
And I have a better way of actually putting it, but I don't remember it.
Well, I think that sounds amazing. Where can people see this?
It's going to have its directorial debut at Kevin's Film Festival, the Smodcastle Film Festival.
And that's going to be in Red Bank, right?
Atlantic Highlands, actually.
Atlantic Highlands. Okay.
Yeah, the movie theater that Kevin bought.
Yeah, which is the movie theater that he grew up going to, right? Or something?
Correct. Yes.
So what made you decide to do this? Was this something that you wrote? Was this something you found? Was this a project that you just attached to? Tell me all about A Mother's Love.
Well, I'm going to go actually before A Mother's Love. At a certain point, I did think about, well, maybe I want to direct something. Thought that for many, many years and just never really came about. It's not like I had a script or anything like that. Quite a few years ago, I did a reading for a script, and it was something that kind of hit really close to home. And I actually even commissioned that. There's a better word for it that I can't think of at the moment, but I did get the script, and it was a feature length. I was hoping to actually be able to make that into a film. I had it for 2 years thinking it's like, oh, okay, but not knowing where to kind of get the money needed, I was able to have someone do the budget for it. And, it was anywhere from like 500,000 to $1 million, but who's going to give me $1 million to make a film when I've never directed before? So that was kind of the crux of that. So at a certain point, it's like I had to let it go. Then I think it was 2016. I would dabble into, it's like I would get these ideas and I would just kind of write a quick little note of ideas of possible scripts, but I never expanded on those little ideas. And then finally, I was just like, screw it. I'm going to do an Indiegogo. I've got this idea that I want to do. And I got a DP that I had worked with before. And we had just barely started kind of like talking about this when a group of friends came to me about their projects that they were going to be doing of short films. And if I'd come on in capacity of producer and actor, because basically everybody was going to contribute to it, creating our own content.
Sure.
And so I said, well, I just kind of started putting this together. And she's like, send it on over, bring it on in. It's like, we'll add it to the project. The one thing that they had with their project is that not that they were all connected per se in storyline, but kind of like the Netflix show Black Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of different vignettes, but they all tied together because of technology in Black Mirror. Well, they all tied together because of a letter.
Was that a coincidence?
No.
Okay.
That's how they actually worked it.
Okay.
It's like there's going to be all vignettes that all deal with a letter, not a alphabet letter, but a letter, written letter. And so someone had suggested, well, I feel like this is how we can actually tie it in if you put a letter in this in some way. So I did that. So we ran an Indiegogo, which wasn't that successful. And out of 8 or 9 shorts, we raised a little over $3,000. So we decided, well, out of those 8 or 9, let's just do 3. And mine was going to definitely be one because most of the funds that were raised were from friends and family and fans on my side. And I had my cast all set. And about a week before we were set to shoot, I lost my lead actor.
Oh, no.
He was on a DC shoot and then wound up in the hospital as well. So trying to find someone to cast that I felt had the vision of what I was going for, I couldn't really find anybody.
It's hard to replace Ben Affleck. The only guy I can think of who was in a DC thing and then also in the hospital. So
nope. Wasn't Ben, but going through the people that I know that would be available and then going through people that other people knew and them giving me ideas and then talking to, and it just wasn't working out. So in order for me to still be able to kind of direct a film, there was another one that I had actually chosen to direct as well. That was written by one of the girls there. And that was A Mother's Love. So we decided, well, instead of doing this, let's do A Mother's Love. So we wound up doing that. And then unfortunately, after shooting all our budget on shooting 3 short films in 3 days, mind you, over the weekend, which is a hefty task, especially mine, which had a location change, we ran out of money. So I didn't have the budget to do post-production with my film. So like all 3 of them kind of sat there for a little bit, and then everybody else kind of took care of their own post-production for their film that they did. And so it wasn't until about a year ago that I got together with the 2 actresses that were in the film that also are part of the film group. So we all wear the hat of producer, director, writer, and actors in that. So we kind of pooled our resources, and somebody that one of the girls know, he said that he would edit the film. He's an editor, and he was like, I'll edit it. So whatever time that he had outside of his actual work. And so we finally got the finished product. I had enough of the product to be able to submit to the film festival for Kevin's Film Festival. Mm-hmm. But it was only till about, I think, a week ago that we had the final version.
Oh, wow.
With all the, nuances of sound and things like that.
That's crazy. What wonderful timing.
And this was even still later than I would have liked. I would have liked it done a long time ago. But when you've got people doing it as a favor, mm-hmm. It's unfortunately kind of has to take a back seat to their job. So it's going to take a little longer.
Absolutely. I've been there on many occasions with many projects, none of them film related, but yeah, I get you.
Yeah. I mean, the feat itself is the fact that we finished the project.
Super. Congratulations. Props, lady. Well done.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Will you tell everybody where they can find you on social media? Because from what I can tell, that's the best place to find out what you're up to and what's going on with you.
Yeah. So people can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's pretty much Marilyn Ghigliotti across the board. On Facebook, I do have my regular and my fan page, both run by me. But because, you're only allotted 5,000 people on your regular page, it's like the overflow has to go somewhere. So it's Marilyn Ghigliotti fan page if they want to follow me on that. And then Twitter is that Clerks girl.
Oh.
I pretty much post everything on there. So make sure you read before you ask me about it, because I always get questions about something that I just posted about.
I would love to say, yeah, you guys, but I'm guilty of doing the same shit. I do that to everybody. It's the worst. As we're heading out, Marilyn, is there anything that we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you about specifically that you wanted to talk about today? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it. I guess. I don't know.
Just out of curiosity, just to satisfy my own question, you moved to Los Angeles from the East Coast in like 1997. Was it specifically to pursue a career in acting?
Yeah, it was. At a certain point, I just felt like I had to either move into the city or move out here. And moving into the city was not something that I cared to even think about.
You're like, I did that already. I mean, I lived in a couple of the boroughs and I'm good.
Yeah, but I was younger. It's not like I had to live, being able to support yourself and, being supported is two different things than the city. And city life is just not for me. I'm more of a suburban type of a person. Some people may ask, it's like, well, why do you think you had to move into the city? It's like you were just over the bridge. And I honestly can't answer that question with thought because I don't know why I thought that.
It was a feeling.
It was just a feeling. I mean, it's not like things have progressed to the point out here that I'm able to make a living as an actress because I'm not. But I feel like there was definitely growth for me. There were also so many contacts in the business out here that I've made that I don't know that I would have been able to make out there living in New Jersey.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Well, thank you for satisfying that curiosity on my end. Yeah. I super appreciate that. At that Clerks girl, Marilyn Ghigliotti, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your hectic schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
It was 100% my pleasure, and you have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2001 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jack's Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.